We will kick off our panel discussion, and we have Charlie back again, who's trying to eat off screen very subtly. It's okay, Charlie, you can eat on screen with us, don't worry. It's no problem. So we have Charlie, Kevin, and Anna. And what I'll allow each of them to give a little brief introduction to themselves. Charlie, if you don't mind going again, because some people are only joining with us now. We'll start with Anna to allow you to keep eating there. You're on mute.
Yeah. I know. I'm fighting with the mute button. Okay, yeah, nice to kind of virtually meet everyone. Thank you for being here. I know it was a long day, a lot of great talks, and we're kind of the closing event. So great to see people still being here. And thank you, Niamh, for inviting us. I'm Anna Mesaros. I'm a senior UX designer and accessibility specialist. And I used to be a accessibility lead in my previous org. And I'm building an accessibility program from scratch in my new company, Techro, which I've just joined recently, which you know how it goes. Yeah, sometimes you have to do that. And yes, I just kind of came by accessibility naturally through learning more about good design and the practices of good design and what that entails, which I'm sure we will cover today during this panel. So yeah, whoever wants to go next, I don't know, Charlie?
Has he finished?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Charlie Triplett. I would normally describe myself as a UX engineer that gradually steered into accessibility over the years. And for the last 5 years, I've really gotten to specialize in just purely accessibility as my primary role. Prior to that, I was, I think, like a lot of people, I had a job title of designer or developer or product manager or engineer, comma, accessibility. So now I spend my days trying to write helpful content and training materials and contributing to atomically.com, which is a free resource that expresses acceptance criteria for just about anything you want to build, and continually adding and updating content on the book on accessibility.
Great. Kevin?
Thank you for having me today. I'm super excited to be here. My background came into accessibility kind of from the automated testing space, and so I am now at an accessibility tools company called Evinced, where I lead all of the customer facing technical teams. So I work with enterprise customers every day, helping them explore new accessibility tools, helping them implement them, helping them get the value, and helping them really use these tools to transform their existing accessibility practice to something that's kind of built for the modern age. So excited to have a conversation today. Thank you all for joining. Excited to get things going.
Yeah, thanks so much. And all of you, I thought it was interesting that we have solutions engineer, UX engineer, UX, and you all have the mindset now of working in accessibility, but are probably at completely different stages in that, Kevin, you work within an accessibility tool company. So what we would imagine is that accessibility for you and for your entire team is an extremely high priority.
Absolutely. I mean, the core value of our process is that accessibility from the outset, accessibility by design, accessibility as part of the plan for creating these tools, and it also helps us focus on how difficult a challenge this can be in working in an environment where we're releasing multiple times a day, making sure that we're able to add accessibility to that process to make sure that we're not shipping things that aren't accessible. Because as an accessibility tool company, as you mentioned, we have hundreds of users that with disabilities of one sort or another that are dependent on our tools to help do their jobs and make their web and mobile experiences better for all of their users. So it's at the forefront. Here at Evinced, we use our own tools to to make sure that one other check to make sure that they're working the way they're extending. But yeah, it's a primary focus for something, and nothing ever gets released at Evinced unless it meets our accessibility standards.
Yeah, and that's great. It probably, so Charlie, I know that you were working in accessibility in larger companies, and Anna, you've now moved to a new company, and you're probably at the beginning of that journey. But I'll come to Charlie first on it. It's when you have worked in large corporations that maybe accessibility isn't as high in the agenda as working in an accessibility tool agency. How do you get that alignment between between teams, between departments, and what are the challenges there?
Yeah, so it is very much what you said earlier about you have all of these different departments. They're often very siloed, and they are not talking to each other. Now, when I worked at the University of Missouri, that was probably a good thing because we were all our own dysfunctional families. But when you're working in a single enterprise and you all are supposed to have, I should say, the same goal, that becomes really problematic. What I really work to do is, and I'm doing this now through a lot of consulting work that I'm doing, is increasing that collaboration, especially between design and dev. There are so many designers who throw the design up over the wall and the devs catch it and they try to make something, they try to make a website or an app that looks like the picture of a website or an app that they were sent. And they really weren't briefed on what the user experience is. Design annotations, increasing that connection between design and dev and necessarily product, means that you end up breaking down some of those barriers, some of those silos. You can't collaborate with people who are unengaged in the process, though. And so what happens is that it's kind of a good feedback loop that happens. If you have somebody who's not engaged, they have to get engaged to understand the UX that the designers are trying to express through their Figma file. That was probably where I saw the most progress in terms of maintaining good workflows between teams. That's really where that interface is problematic, is between design and dev. Because individual contributors, you can win them over, but changing the process is what matters.
Definitely. And for you, Anna, now in a company that is, you're back at the beginning of that journey. So you took on that journey of getting buy-in and alignment in your former place of work, and now you are back at the beginning. And so that buy-in or that alignment of processes, what's your approach to it now? And are you coming up against different challenges than in your previous place?
Kind of yes and no. I would say that it's a bit of a different size of a company. So I'm coming from GoTo, formerly LogMeIn, which is like upwards of several thousand people across the globe, and a portfolio of many different products, where of course accessibility challenges might be a bit different and they look different, and maybe the tactics of acquiring buy-in might look different. Whereas now my new company, Techro, it's really more of a, I don't know if startup is the right way to describe it. They're not as fresh, but still it's a fairly small company with a singular kind of primary product, with kind of diverging maybe offering of specific services. But I feel like still maybe, at least right now in this part of the process, for me, it looks like it might be easier to get buy-in when you really are looking at just one thing. I understand that portfolios are really tricky that way because when you try to negotiate ROI, obviously it will work better for some products in the portfolio than the others, depending on kind of target audience or really investment in the product itself. So yeah, I feel like the size of the company really contributes to the difference in approach that you might want to take. But I definitely felt what Charlie described about the importance of collaboration and how important it is for the design and engineering to both be an active part. of making things happen. So I feel like regardless of the size, that part is true either way.
We have a comment from Ed. Accessibility should be baked into the process, and that's yes, well and good. But how do you bake it into the process? And I suppose this is, please share, anybody, the attendees, what in your company, if you're using tools, techniques, tactics, what are you using, so that more of us can learn about it. And we saw Kevin earlier, Tal gave us a demo on Evinced, that with a Figma plugin that you can create kind of this alignment between the designers and the engineers, so that not everybody has to know all of the rules of the guidelines, which can be overwhelming. Because if you go to someone and say, well, here's all the guidelines and you need to know all of these things, and we need to work towards all of these guidelines, that's a bit much for everyone, time consuming. So having tools and techniques to make that easier is better. But what are there some myths or some challenges around that alignment, and what are design afraid to hand over to engineering, and are engineering afraid of what designers are sending over?
No, I mean, I think that you've really hit on the points there, and what's interesting, and maybe Tal touched on this a little bit earlier, is that actual feature of providing all of everything that a developer would need to carry on that level of accessibility, what came directly from our customers. This is something that we, our some of our largest customers came to us and said, hey, this is a significant pain point. As Charlie mentioned, I mean, it's a universal pain point. Where this handoff between design and development can be really rough. There's a lot of round trips, whether it's via Jira ticket or what have you, going back and forth. And you're right, like there's just too much to remember, especially for a designer or developer who's got 1,000 other things to be thinking about and doing and deadlines to meet. The goal is to put guardrails around these types of things, so that you don't have to think about it. All the information that you need to make things accessible is there while using these tools. And speaking of some myths that go across there, I think some of the things that we see a lot is that accessibility can be, there's this myth that accessibility is completely deterministic. It's either this or it's that, and where in even within our accessibility experts here at Events, there's reasonable disagreement to be had. And so one of the things that our tools, and in order to be increase the level of adoption and usage and impact that they have, tools have to be flexible, because as we all know, there can be reasonable arguments, and so the tools need to be flexible and make sure that you can configure them for the unique aspects of your apps or your websites. Or there's even times where our customers have come to us and be like, look, we will get to all of this, but right now we just want to focus on, say, keyboard and screen reader issues. Can you help us focus on those things, and we'll get to the other stuff that later. You need to be able to have and qualify goals with the tools that you're working on. And so, yeah, I mean, that's one of the myths that we see a lot, and where tools can really help out if they're designed for actual enterprise usage. So it's an area where we've certainly been able to help folks.
Yeah, and I think that idea that, okay, we know we have to fix a lot of things, but we're going to focus on these things first, from prioritizing, because once you kind of scratch the surface of, oh God, our platform isn't accessible, and we have, we got an audit and now we have 2,000 million things to fix, that can be quite overwhelming. So Charlie, how is a team even start to deal with that? And could that also be one of the factors that limits companies in starting the journey on accessibility? Because once you scratch that, once you peer in, there's no going back.
Yeah, I mean, so accessibility and the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and kind of the things that get thrown at people as soon as they find out that accessibility exists is completely overwhelming. And I think that is a challenge in affecting change in any organization. My take on how to approach this is kind of what Kevin just described, is let people get smaller and more focused in the scope of what they're working on. Okay, if a company is interested in keyboard accessibility as like, yeah, we want to nail this, let people nail that first. Let people get quick wins. One of the most important things that people get as a reward out of their work is a sense of progress. And if you are coming at an enterprise and saying, well, we have to meet all of these WCAG criteria, which, by the way, you've never heard of and sound like a programming language, which makes it sound like somebody else's problem, especially if you're a designer or a product manager. And the first time somebody sees WCAG, you know, their eyes do one of those spinny things where it rolls in the back of their head and they kind of pass out for a few minutes. But so much of the accessibility work I see does that. It just punches people in the face with WCAG. And why don't you know WCAG? You're kind of an idiot for not knowing WCAG. That's nonsense. Let people have small wins. If that small win is saying, hey, you know what? We're going to focus on one annotation or maybe 2 or 3 annotations. We're going to focus on annotating headings. We're going to focus on annotating the difference between buttons and links. And we're going to annotate landmarks. And we're going to do that this quarter for the next 3 months. And we're going to nail that. We're going to get that down to the point where designers are handing off these 3 or 4 annotations to devs. Devs are killing it every time. And we made a win. We saw progress. And then you can move on to the next thing. But dumping all of accessibility, especially if someone's just gone through an audit and they get that spreadsheet and that spreadsheet has like 900 issues on it. You've got to find ways to let people have quick wins and give them a sense of progress. Without that sense of progress, Kevin, you've seen this, I'm sure. We've all seen this. People, teams, organizations just get bogged down and eventually it just becomes noise that you leave over there.
Yeah, and that probably speaks to the engagement factor that you were talking about as well. If you just keep loading people with problems, they're less engaged, and giving some milestones and progress is something that, you know, is about that engagement and people keeping the people engaged. We are based in Europe, Anna and myself, you guys are in the US, and obviously the EU Accessibility Act is coming in here, and it's putting a different type of pressure on companies that maybe is not so much in the US. You have different legislation, of course. We had a comment there from someone that the external pressure that is coming is of legislation is something that is helping us to refocus our design and put accessibility first. And so, Anna, I wonder if that is something you're seeing maybe in your organization as well, is maybe that conversation and the external pressure being something to push the agenda forward.
Yeah, external pressure is great always, but sometimes it's not there. I would say more often than not, you cannot rely on external pressure happening, and you need to navigate kind of the buy-in conversations without it. Once it happens, it usually helps with I would say the primary blocker prioritization, where you get to put accessibility on top of a lot of lists and roadmaps, be it fixing what's already out there or baking it in for the new things that are going out. But yeah, I feel like it's not always there, but kind of bringing it back to the conversation about alignment. I myself, as a designer, I really feel like we do have a lot of power even before we go to handoff and preparing our, say, design files for engineers to take over, in that we, there's a lot of conversation a lot of you might have heard about shifting left on accessibility and kind of starting to make decisions about accessibility earlier on. And I really feel like that is where a lot of things can happen without high-level buy-in. You can kind of just design in accessible ways without needing that kind of top-down approach on accessibility, where sometimes before you get to handoff and you have a very tricky component and you need to annotate it in a way that would make it accessible, you might want to ask yourself, do I need that component? Drag and drop, everyone's favorite component ever to make accessible, or like maybe date picker. Maybe sometimes, our job as designers is to really take a look at what we're making and ask ourselves, is there a way to make this in a more accessible fashion, in a more accessible way? And then we won't have to fight with, and figure out all the success criteria and try to figure out annotation in a way that would make it more accessible once it's built. So yeah, I really feel like shifting left is a way to bake accessibility into the process, as someone mentioned in the comments, and make things more accessible from the start without even necessarily having the top-down buy-in.
And Ed has a comment there that they do their in-house manual testing. They have occasional JIRA tickets, but it's just occasional, and it's about learning and sharing knowledge. And also, he can't stress how much design system is the absolute game changer if you get this right. I see the designers there, the heads bobbing there, really, really so much. And it's maybe having somebody at the beginning of the process that it doesn't need to be a top-down buy-in. It's just a way of thinking. And if you get that way of thinking into the company from an early stage, is probably, the best. I'm thinking of, there's a meme that goes around, there's like two guys building a wall and the bricks, they're just throwing it on. And it's like, don't worry, we'll fix it later. Just build it now, and then we'll go back to it and fix it later, And I think, Kevin, like you mentioned, you're not only working on an accessibility tool, you're shipping features for your to help companies with accessibility. So design systems and that shifting left and everything from that side, I suppose there needs to be a lot of effort at that stage before it even, moves to your desks and before deployment.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more. I mean, essentially, we're in the business of shifting accessibility left. That's what we do each and every day, and a day in and day out. And it comes with significant challenges. I mean, the concept is simple, and it's like, okay, let's do it before it gets to production. We've all heard the different comparisons of, we were just talking to one of the largest telecommunications companies in the United States, and they said, finding an issue in production costs them about $17,000 to fix, but if they find it in the early development stages, just costs a few hundred. And so it's like this type of, that adds up really quickly. Now, the thing that I'll caution folks about is that it's not like companies haven't thought of this, and that shifting left is a brand new concept that the folks haven't wanted to do. And there's been a couple different reasons why accessibility has struggled to shift left to this point, and one of them is just simply because if we look at the tools from the previous generation, from 5 to 7 years ago, they just simply weren't ready to be implemented in modern development processes. They were difficult to implement. They didn't really find a whole lot. They weren't super accurate. And this is what led to a lot of engineering teams, development teams, to just disregarding them. They weren't, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, is something we kind of say here in Montana, maybe other places as well. The effort just wasn't worth the value that they were getting. And so that's why now we're fortunate today to have tools that actually do fit into modern development processes. They are easy to implement for developers. They provide actionable reports. They there's very little overhead or maintenance, and they actually can fit into this process at all the different places, that whether that's design that we've discussed a little bit, whether it's unit testing where you can test your component library to an extremely high level of accessibility, compliance, to where you put all those components together, we can test in an automated way, all the way to the end where you can monitor in production. And instead of using a production monitoring to find issues and then send them back to engineering, it's more about finding the gaps. Where can we improve training? What folks need a little bit of additional help, and then use that to then drive that shifting left even further. So I would say that there's optimism, and it's exciting time, especially for the shifting left motion.
Yeah, and I love that you said the previous generation, those tools from 5 to 7 years ago. You know, it's not, we're not even talking about 20, 30 years ago. It's still a very short frame of time. And something you touched on in your talk as well, Charlie, was that the web, the mobile responsiveness. You know, I think the book, what was it, 2010, only came out, and so maybe there's a lot of change now and a lot of tools being developed in a very short amount of time. But even so, maybe there's not enough tools. What tools do we need, Charlie? What do they need? We will go build. Oh, you're on mute.
I thought you were headed maybe in the direction of like, maybe there's more UI innovation. I'm not convinced there is. If you look at, I mean, you can talk about JavaScript frameworks all day, but if you look at, like, if you picked up a website from, you know, say 2010 to 2016 and held it up to something today, would you know that it was dated? Would you know that that layout was like, oh man, we don't do stuff like that anymore? Not really. Maybe the only UI innovation we have right now is, you know, now we have ChatGPT, which is just a series of message bubbles. I guess we can call that UI innovation. But no, I agree 100% with Kevin. The tools, you know, if you're just running a simple syntax checker, which is, you know, that's the best way I know to explain most accessibility automated tools, is it's going to check the syntax of the code. It's like using a spell checker in Microsoft Word. And we know that we wouldn't trust sending off a crucial legal document, having never proofread it, and just running spell check and be like, I think this will hold up in court. You'd never do that. But so many of those tools kind of bought people into this assumption that that's what they could do for accessibility. Even if even if the tool didn't say that, that's how people interpreted it. Is like, well, if I can make all these errors disappear, we're golden.
Absolutely. And are there enough tools, let's say, and we'll move on maybe to the, you know, always the elephant in the room for all of these conversations now, is how is AI helping and what is it doing? Is it causing more trouble for the idea that there's simple fixes for accessibility? Is it something that can be used for as an advantage? You know, Anna, let's see what you think on AI and accessibility. A way forward?
I'm really, I'm really not certain I'm the best person to comment on it. I understand that a lot of doors have been and will be opened with things like Be My AI and similar tools in terms of navigating just, you know, the environment and kind of similar solutions. In terms of building things that are accessible, I feel there's still a big question mark, kind of related to what Charlie said. I still think there has to be, in most cases, a human behind the wheel, so to say. We still will likely we will have to deal with a lot of false positives and like other issues where not everything will be able to be automated for a while. As you know, automated testing can only go so far. And even with AI, I imagine where things like meaningful alt text descriptions can probably be checked by an AI-based tool, but a lot of things would probably still require human oversight. But I'm curious to hear others' kind of takes on this.
Yes, always. Kevin, we'll go to you. And also in the chat, if you want to, are you using AI solution? Are you using it as part of your workflow? Are you using it for testing with accessibility? You know, do let us know what how it is helping or maybe hindering your work processes. Kevin, your thoughts?
Absolutely. So AI is something that Evinced has been working on for a while, and it's been a really interesting journey. Um, when last year or so, when ChatGPT became focused, we jumped right on it, and we wanted to see where things stand with ChatGPT and things like GitHub Copilot, where okay, so let's see. And our initial thoughts were, okay, so maybe we can make kind of a wrapper around ChatGPT to make sure that, if it gives you three responses for how to build an accessible component, we just help you pick the correct one, the one that's most accessible and things like that. But the problem is that, and as I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, none of the responses from any of these tools were accessible at all. And so essentially, Evinced has, we've been required to create our own Gen AI models so that we can make sure that the responses that are coming out of them are providing actual value and accurate accessibility information. So we've taken two different approaches to this. One, we have a chatbot that's been really exciting for folks, and this is really solving the problem around, look, accessibility teams and companies, if you even have one, are often stretched super thin. You're getting requests from dozens, if not more, development teams with time sensitive requests. What if we could automate those requests and those reviews so that they could simply ask questions to and get reliable information, taking the maybe we would still need the accessibility leaders for the exciting, the complex stuff, but we could handle say the bottom 60% of those requests that can be answered fairly quickly, with the confidence that they'll be getting accurate information. The second half of that is code generation, which is a bit trickier because we need to work with the tools that are available, things like GitHub Copilot, and that requires opening Microsoft opening APIs and things for extensions and things like that. But I think we need to the thoughts around AI is we need to use it with good judgment. It's not going to be a magic wand. It's not going to solve all our problems. It's not going to remove the need for human judgment, manual testing. But there are ways, if we use it intelligently, that it can certainly help. And I think these are a couple of different ways that can do that.
I think it's that intelligent piece. And I saw Charlie nodding along there as well. Your take on AI?
So usually when I talk to AI experts, my first words out of my mouth are like, okay, so we can both agree that this is a scam, right? And here's the thing, here's what I mean by that. So first of all, AI, when people are saying AI, what they're really talking about is machine learning. Most of these are not actually artificially intelligent things. That's actually a completely different calculus when you get down to the science. Machine learning is a tool, though, that looks at a large language model. And when you ask it a question, it looks at everything in the model and essentially kind of says, well, based on what I see in the model, this is like, I'm like 98% certain that this is what you're asking for. And it's kind of giving you a response based on everything that it's absorbed. And the problem is that if everything it's absorbed, so earlier somebody pointed out, 95% of the web is inaccessible. So if 95% of what it's absorbing as, what constitutes a website is inaccessible, it can only give you that same garbage back out. It's garbage in, garbage out. This is like one of the oldest concepts in computer science, and it hasn't gone away even with AI, or what we call AI. So essentially, I know there's a lot of anxiety about AI and people using it. We're not going to be replaced by AI. We're not going to be replaced by people using AI. We're going to be replaced by people who know how to use AI. And those are three, that's a very different concept there. So it's very powerful if you know how to use it. But people are kind of casually using it, and that's not really it's not really getting them where they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just have comments as well there that finding and creating a clean data set is definitely a challenge, and removing the tendency to optimize to the average. And this is something that my area being more on the language and how we communicate with people. And when everybody's just saying, okay, well, let's ask the language models. And to your point, Charlie, they're looking at what has already been done. And if what has already been done is not to a high standard, you're just throwing out more kind of average or garbage, like that. So, Kevin, the fact that you guys found that we cannot accurately rely on these responses, and so it's up to us to create our own. I think the model of that chat and being able to get quick responses is great. But the responses need to be accurate, and the responses need to be reliable. So that's really important. And as what Stacey says as well, is that human oversight is definitely required, and we can't really walk away from the human in the loop. I think is essential on that as well. And so what we'll do, if there's any more somebody's talking there about tools they use for user testing, is Maze, using Maze.co for research and user testing. If there's any other tools that you're using within your workflows and part of your teams, do share in the chat to kind of help other people use it, bring it into their companies, because there's all companies of different sizes here. Any tools that you guys can recommend, Anna, that are you bringing in to your organization at the moment?
I don't know that I would name specific tools. I really don't think the tools are the secret sauce here. Mm-hmm. Find the tools that work for you and for your team and for your process. I'm the biggest advocate of not imposing too much new things when you talk about accessibility with new groups of people. I think the best approach is to try and find ways in existing processes that could accommodate a little bit more accessibility, be it, I don't know, a new linting plugin, or be it a new, handoff annotation tool in Figma, if your design team uses Figma. So meet your teams where they already are, and try to find the tools that will be the least disruptive for their process. Because again, I think, Charlie, you said it best. It's all about kind of easy wins, low-hanging fruit, and getting people to kind of taste the success, not starting with the struggle and saying, oh, there's so much to fix, we're never going to get there, but actually starting with things that you can accomplish and can say, we've done this has been successful, let's do more. And I think that will help people grow the appetite for just more improvements, more accessibility, and you go from there.
Yeah, Kevin, I see you nodding along profusely there with some of Anna's points. Things to add?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just couldn't agree more. Like, trying to insert the wrong tool at the wrong place is going to do more damage than any potential value that it provides. And I think I'm just super aligned in our experiences in helping enterprises, that you have to first learn enough about the processes that you're putting using good judgment of where you're inserting tools. Two, you don't want to do it too fast. We want to ease people in. We want to make sure that they have the information ahead of time, and they're knowing what, we know what they're about to be asked. And then, we have to have tools. You have to have the right tools in order to make any sort of headway. I mean, if you have to have tools that can adapt and fit into their existing workflows. You're never going to have any success if you're asking your engineering team to adapt to the tool and not vice versa. So anyway, yeah, just couldn't agree more. It makes a lot of sense.
It's like what's that, square peg into a round hole then. It really starts with the people first. Think about what you're trying to achieve, who needs to do it, and adapt in that way. And your thoughts on that, Charlie? That's your name.
Yeah.
I was reading the comment from Ed as he's multitasking here all day.
No, it's fine. I am yet another white guy in tech with a beard. So we all kind of look the same.
An amazing white guy in tech. That's the.
Thank you. No, okay. So yeah, any tool you have. So earlier I mentioned How to Measure Anything by Douglas Hubbard. Any tool you have is better than a hunch or a general feeling of resentment and anger that you have about the current state of accessibility in your team. So if the tool that you have is Axe, if the tool that you have is Wave, if the tool that you have is Chrome extensions, okay, those are not bad tools. They're just incomplete, but that's okay. The thesis of How to Measure Anything is that any data point you have is still powerful. Any data point you have still helps you make better decisions later. But what you have to be able to do, though, is take that data and turn it into something that's a target. You have to be able to say, okay, well, we're down here and we want to be up here. And there's been a lot of talk of leadership buy-in I've seen in the chat. And that's what leadership buy-in is for. You go to them and you say, hey, we are down here. I need you to help us get up here by setting this as a reasonable target. And I need you to talk about this at every town hall, every quarterly meeting, every manager's meeting. And I'm going to give you a number that you're going to put on your executive dashboard, and you're going to look at it every week when you have your meeting. You're going to help me push this as a target. And even if your tools are inadequate, if you have a measurable target, you can make huge progress across the enterprise. And the better that your tools are, the better those targets can be, and the more realistic they are in terms of what they're doing for accessibility in the enterprise. So look, any tool you have is a great tool if it helps you set a target, and you can use that leadership buy-in to push towards that target.
Yes, if you have the buy-in. If you have the buy-in, and I think that is the golden question,
Right.
is the how to get that. And Charlie, you mentioned in the chat there as well that when you were in the insurance industry, and I don't know if there's a case study or anything on that we know things intuitively, right? Like, oh, that looks hard to understand. Make it easier. It will have an uplift, but we lead a lot of things with intuition. We lead a lot with subjectivity. We lead a lot with opinion and bias. And what we need to do is lead with objectivity, measurable systems and frameworks that all teams can align around, can measure, and then progress. So for team engagement as well, that you achieved something. You've achieved something, and now the company can feel good about it, but can we look at the business outcomes as well? So we're coming up to 5:45 in Ireland, and a lot of people have been with us for a good number of hours today. It has been a really, really great day. Amazing speakers, same as yesterday, absolutely value packed. But what we will do is just leave it on this. And if you had to give a tip to maybe somebody, there's a few people in the middle of their journeys, but a lot of people, I think, are at the start of the journeys with accessibility and buy-in and alignment with teams. And if you could give a tip to our attendees then on how to start with embedding accessibility into the processes, what could they do? So a tip from each of you. So Anna?
Yeah, thank you, Ni, for putting me first.
First, Anya, yeah.
Of course.
Sorry about that.
No,
but because you're at the beginning. You're actually living and breathing this now, and
yeah,
it might be
definitely.
about tools. It's just maybe how you speak to people, how you frame the how you frame the mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I feel like that's something that we've kind of touched on over the course of this discussion, but I'll say it again. Yes, buy-in is very important, and at a certain point, you will not be able to go further without it. But also, you don't need permission to get started today. Each and every one of us building products can do something within our own work that will help build towards that goal of making things more accessible. And you don't always have to wait for someone kind of in a top-down way to come to you and tell you to do it. We don't need to always wait for, that external pressure that might never come. We might need to start ourselves. And again, I feel like there are a lot of things that we can just start doing as part of good design, part of good development practices that will end up in things being more accessible along the way. So I think that will be my one big tip of the day.
Absolutely. Do not ask for permission. I love that. Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would sum up my tips is, I've never met an engineer or QA person or anyone that doesn't want to do the right thing. We just have to enable them to do that in a way that doesn't get in the way of their goals, or doesn't impede their process, or doesn't, burn up their cycles. And we just need to do it in an effective way. And that can be done in multiple ways. We've talked about different ways in which we can facilitate communication between departments. That's super important. Making sure that, when it comes to tools, like how do we, make sure that the tools that we choose to aid us in this process are the right ones for our organization. These are the types of things that we can continue to facilitate, and can make a huge difference in promoting change in a culture of accessibility across all of the different teams.
Absolutely. Communication, don't ask for permission, just do it anyway. And Charlie, I'll leave a final tip to you. And just to say, Charlie wrote the book on accessibility, sharing that in the chat, LinkedIn to connect with our speakers as well there. And also, if you want to get a demo and look at Design Assist with Evinced as well. So all of this information is in the chat for you as well. But some final tips from you, Charlie.
Yeah, I want to build on something Kevin said. People want to do the right thing, but often they only want to do the right thing once. So here's the thing. I love this quote from Buckminster Fuller. He said, "You can't change the way people think. All you can do is give them a tool, the use of which will change their thinking." So if you want to integrate accessibility into people's workflows, you have to intimately understand their workflows and understand where you can give them tools that will affect the way that they work. If people change the way they work by using that tool, it'll change the way that they think. That's why I built Atomic Ally, was to inject acceptance criteria into the way people work, and that changes the way people think. If I could only say one thing about accessibility, I would just have that quote on every single slide for 15 minutes.
You got to say it to me again. Do it again. The quote.
Buckminster Fuller, he said, "You can't change the way people think. All you can do is give them a tool, the use of which will change their thinking."
Excellent. And I think Charlie, Kevin, and Anna, on that note, that your thoughts, experiences have been extremely valuable. And yeah, thank you for the quote in there. Extremely valuable. Your time, sharing your time with all of us throughout today has been amazing as well. So I think I can speak for everybody that has attended today and even yesterday that this has been a great first attempt at an online conference all around accessibility. Please do, anyone in the chat, if you have more questions, get in touch with all of our participants, get in touch with me. Let us know if this has been valuable, and we will do many, many more events like this, because I think what has been touched on throughout the 2 days is that this is about awareness. It's about raising awareness. It's about asking questions. It's about breaking down those barriers and being able to find the solutions. So at Leaders for Accessibility, we're bringing together the solutions. We're bringing together consultants, specialists, tech solutions, so we can put everything in one place for companies to say, hey, you know what, we're ready now to push the agenda on accessibility. We don't know where to go, we don't know what to do, and we have one place where they can connect with all people and all tools like this. So if you have a solution, if you want to be part of helping organizations push the agenda forward, get in touch with me at leadersforaccessibility.com. Everybody's saying, time well spent. Thanks for the discussion. Enjoyed the sessions. It's amazing. Go to try and give this to my grad school and share it with them. I hope to have the video sessions all live tomorrow for sharing with transcripts and everything like that. If there's anything we've missed out, you have more questions, do connect with me. And thank you once again to our really great panelists. This has been a super talk and a super day. So thank you everyone, and have a really great rest of your day, no matter where you are in the world.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. And thanks, Niamh, for having us. Have a great day.
Problem. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.